In the darkest days of the Great Depression, when banks were collapsing and hunger haunted New York streets, John D. Rockefeller Jr. made a decision. Everyone else called mad, to build an entire city within a city on 11 acres of empty midtown real estate. Newspapers called it an insane gamble. Advisors begged him to walk away. Instead, he would sign checks, clear 200 buildings, and vow that it was unthinkable to leave New Yorkers jobless. A place born from crisis that would alter not just a neighborhood, but the fate of a city. But what made one man defy despair, and what happened after the first stone was laid? In the final weeks of 1929, John D. Rockefeller Jr. found himself bound to 11 acres of midtown land. The Metropolitan Opera had just withdrawn, leaving him with an empty lease and a city in freefall. Banks had failed, businesses shuttered, and the press called his next move an insane gamble. Board members urged caution. Advisors pleaded for retreat. But Rockefeller refused to let the land sit idle. In private letters, he framed the dilemma as a test of responsibility. "It is unthinkable," he wrote, "to leave New Yorkers jobless when we have the means to help." The lease, signed before the crash, now carried a heavy cost. Millions owed to Columbia University each year, whether the site was built or not. Still, the financial pressure was only part of the equation. Rockefeller believed the city needed more than charity. It needed action, and he was determined to provide it. Newspaper editorials mocked the plan, calling it reckless and doomed. Yet, behind closed doors, Rockefeller insisted that building was a moral duty. He gathered architects and planners, not just to fill empty space, but to create a blueprint for hope. While others hoarded cash and waited out the storm, Rockefeller began signing checks, clearing entire city blocks, and laying the foundation for something no one else dare. His vision was not just about bricks and mortar. It was about restoring faith in a city that had nearly lost its way. Demolition crews arrived in July 1931, clearing more than 200 buildings from the heart of Midtown. The worksite stretched across 22 acres, a patchwork of mud, beams, and rising ambition. In the depths of the Depression, Rockefeller Center became a lifeline for thousands. Payroll ledgers from the era list over 40,000 workers, carpenters, bricklayers, electricians, and iron workers, each one earning wages that kept families afloat when relief lines circled city blocks. Mohawk iron workers, famed for their skill and nerve, traveled weekly from Kanawake, walking steel high above the city. Italian and Irish laborers, German masons, and the first female construction clerks joined the ranks, forging a rare sense of solidarity. Rockefeller's wage policy, recorded in union archives, cut pay less than most sites, earning grudging respect and gratitude. "We saw money again. We bought shoes. My children had Christmas," one Mohawk ironworker later recalled. The logistics were staggering. Materials arrived by the truckload, coordinated through a private power plant and a hidden grid of underground tunnels. This service network, still in use today, kept the site running day and night, insulated from the chaos above. By 1939, the skyline had changed. 14 Art Deco towers rose where tenements and shops once stood, each one a testament to collective effort. Rockefeller Center was no longer a blueprint. It was a living engine of hope, built by the hands of a city determined to survive. Art was never an afterthought at Rockefeller Center. In 1934, Paul Manship's Prometheus, an 18-foot gilded bronze, took its place above the sunken plaza. The figure, arms outstretched, brought mythic drama to Midtown, an emblem of ambition, fire, and human striving. 3 years later, Lee Laurie's Atlas arrived on Fifth Avenue, shouldering the celestial spheres. These weren't just decorations, they were statements, visible to every passerby, declaring that Rockefeller Center belonged to the city and to the future. But the boldest commission came inside. In 1932, John D. Rockefeller Jr. and his wife Abby Aldrich Rockefeller hired Diego Rivera to paint a mural in the RCA building's lobby. Rivera was famous and controversial. His sketches showed a world divided, capitalists, workers, scientists, and revolutionaries all colliding on a single wall. As the mural neared completion in 1933, Rivera added the unmistakable face of Lenin. Nelson Rockefeller, overseeing the project, demanded its removal. Rivera refused. On May 10, 1933, the mural was sealed behind plaster overnight. The press erupted. Artists protested in the streets. Rivera's vision, erased in New York, would reappear in Mexico, larger and even more defiant. The center's art program had reached its limit. Beauty and power, yes, but only within the boundaries set by its patrons. By 1933, the RCA building rose above Midtown, its limestone face catching the morning sun. RCA moved its headquarters into the tower that year, bringing with it a new kind of power: broadcasting. NBC studios filled the upper floors, wiring the building with miles of cable and glass-walled control rooms. That same year, NBC linked both coasts for the first time, sending live radio from New York to San Francisco. Overnight, Rockefeller Center became the country's broadcasting capital. Downstairs, Radio City Music Hall was a different kind of stage. Samuel Roxy Rothafel, the showman behind its curtain, battled accountants and executives over every detail. The first year nearly bankrupted the hall, but Roxy's vision, lavish shows, affordable tickets, and the debut of the Rockettes won out. Crowds packed the seats, drawn by the promise of spectacle for everyone, not just the elite. When war came, the center turned outward. The plaza became Victory Square, draped in flags and banners. War bond rallies filled the steps, with army bands, Hollywood stars, and thousands of New Yorkers waving paper flags. In May 1943, more than 20,000 gathered as the city pledged $155 million in bonds. NBC broadcast the rallies nationwide, making Rockefeller Center the country's loudest cheerleader. Patriotism wasn't just a slogan. It echoed from every speaker, every window, every crowded plaza. The center had become more than a workplace. It was a national loudspeaker, a place where unity wasn't just imagined, but heard and seen. December 1931, a cold wind swept through the muddy construction site. Paychecks in hand, a group of workers pooled their wages to buy a modest balsam fir, 20 feet tall, decorated with tin cans, paper garlands, and even a few craned lunch pails. There were no crowds, just men in overalls and a handful of children, but the moment was captured in a black and white photograph that still survives. That first Christmas tree was not a spectacle, but a gesture of hope, proof that something joyful could rise from hard times. Over the next few years, families began to gather at the plaza, drawn by word of mouth and the promise of light in winter. In 1936, another experiment took shape: a sunken skating rink meant to lure passers-by during slow months. The response was instant. By the end of the first season, more than 100,000 skaters had taken to the ice. Management made it a permanent fixture in 1939. Together, the tree and the rink turned the plaza into a gathering place where strangers became neighbors and tradition took root. After 1945, Rockefeller Center became the headquarters of ambition. Multinational corporations filled its towers, insurance giants, publishers, and the world's leading broadcasters. The RCA building, now 30 Rockefeller Plaza, became the nerve center of American media. In 1952, NBC launched The Today Show from Studio 1A, bringing live television into millions of homes each morning. 2 years later, The Tonight Show took over late nights, and by 1975, Saturday Night Live was broadcasting from Studio 8H, turning the center into a household name. Film crews set their sights on the plaza, capturing its energy in movies like Home Alone 2 and Elf. The skating rink, the Christmas tree, and the golden Prometheus statue became shorthand for New York itself. More than 50 urban complexes around the world have borrowed its blueprint, but none have matched its fame. Rockefeller Center stood as proof that a single address could define a city's image for generations. In 1931, as over 40,000 workers built Rockefeller Center during the Great Depression, New York City gained more than jobs. It gained a blueprint for the modern city. Documents reveal how John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s decision, called an insane gamble in the press, became the foundation for a 22-acre complex that redefined urban life with its mix of art, commerce, and public space. Records show the center's traditions, from the first tree lighting in 1931 to permanent skating in 1939, grew into symbols recognized around the world. Yet some details remain unclear. Not all employment records have survived, and internal debates over public art. Art are still partly sealed. Today, Rockefeller Center stands as documented proof that vision and risk can transform a city's fate. As historian Daniel Okrent wrote, "It was and remains the heart of New York."